Hi, my name is
Hey.
Carolyn Langer. I'm from WICB. I'm the Hip Hop Rap and R&B Music Director. And it
Mhm.
looks like I'm accompanied here by Nissim Black. And it's nice to be here with you today.
Likewise, likewise.
I'm really
Thank you.
excited to be here with you, although electronically still. It's really, I think, a really marvelous conversation because I feel that you are a pioneer. And I'd like
Mhm.
to talk to you a little bit about that and what that's like, and
Mhm.
being a converted rapper and living your story, your dream, and also touch a little bit on your most recent project, Love Notes.
Okay,
So to
amazing.
kind of get us started, for those who are tuning in now, just to preface a little bit about you, from what I could gauge, I think the best way to really get your full story or just a little snippets of it is from the documentary done by Noisy and Vice titled
Mhm.
From Drugs and Guns to Orthodox Judaism. So, from drugs and guns being D Black living in Seattle to Orthodox Judaism converting and living in Israel as Nissim Black. So it's a crazy juxtaposition. So I'm kind of just curious about how those two are, very diametrically opposed, but I wonder how they were ultimately kind of always connected.
Well, one thing is proximity, although which is very common, even especially back east, that the African American neighborhoods are usually either in or adjacent to the Jewish community. So I grew up like that also in Seattle. So at the same time, I was exposed to the sort of life, the type of lifestyle that I was exposed to and eventually involved in. That was all happening, at the same time. I used to have to walk through the synagogue parking lot in order to go to school, to take, certain shortcuts. We would ride our bikes there. It was very familiar to seeing what people walking on the Sabbath, on Saturday, whatever. So in terms of proximity, that's it. But I think, now it's just sort of like weaving more of it together, in terms of like not just like the drugs part as far as like, but sort of like just implementing and bringing hip hop and that culture, um, not really into Judaism, because I think I look at them as two separate worlds, but sort of being my full self and grabbing all those elements right now. I'm sort of starting to find that there are, certain similarities. The way that we say our prayers, in the morning, you know what I mean? It's almost like we're rapping in the morning, you know what I'm saying, every
Mm-hmm.
morning. Just a certain nuances and cadences of how things are going. I really think like that's really helped me be able to write some melodies and things like that as I'm, you know what I mean, as a spitting is also too in the morning. So, I guess that's the biggest connection is proximity, and the tefillas, the prayers. So.
Yeah, what was interesting about when I watched the documentary and I learned a little bit about some relation to music and the culture of Judaism. And
Right.
it's interesting because there's like this different perspective of music that you've gotten from having this religious
Mm-hmm.
aspect to it, where music, you said, was the highest connection to God. And
Right.
I think like rapping in the hood, your connections are to music are definitely like more earthly, so
Right.
I guess like, well,
Right.
what is it like now to have a different purpose to your music,
I was. I,
rebranded maybe?
I would say even it's less earthly even in the hood, because you think about it, that's usually, a person's escape when they get that pen and that pad. Or now today, most people are using a tablet or their phone. It's sort of like being able to pour out your inner essence comes out in music. You know what I mean? So I would say that even, not even thinking about it before, but that's even a bigger connection, as opposed to like on the spiritual side. It was revealed all throughout the Bible, even in the Christian Bible, that the prophets, a lot of times are only able to get to a level of prophecy once they had music. Music was that next thing that elevated them and to be able to see. And there's a major connection between music and prophecy, even in hip hop. When you look at, almost many people would say Tupac and Biggie predicted their death. You know what I mean? They sort of like spoke these things into existence, because music hits a higher place than what people are even aware of. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think, but it is the highest form of spirituality. To say in the Jewish temple many years ago, you couldn't go anywhere. That one of the main items that you had to have was the choir that was there singing the whole entire time. They were like the theme music throughout there. So a part of this uplifted experience you get. But that's the same thing music does for a person when they're in the hood or in a relationship. Like even like this project Love Notes was like to be able to give over something that gives a person a certain feeling at that time, like, oh, I can conquer this, or you know what I mean, or this relationship makes me feel like X, and you know what I mean, just sort of like sometimes you get a good scent and you smell it and you're like, wow, that brings me back to this, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think music is very, very powerful spiritually and also even in the hood.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It has the capacity to travel everywhere pretty quickly, and
Mm.
inform, unite, and tell stories and stuff like that. I think definitely from your perspective, you have kind of an interesting one, to say the least. So something that I think is really profound just about you in general. Regardless of your religious endeavor, just your mindset, I think, has always kind of been in this interconnected higher, always being a part of something greater than you. And
Yeah.
I'm like kind of really stealing those words right out of your mouth, like
Right.
something I could also steal some other words from an Instagram post that you had. I'm taking a little bit out of context, but it really stuck with me. You said the words we use have the power to create the world or destroy the world. It's forever
Right.
our challenge to know what to say and when to say it. So I was kind of wondering, you touched on Love Notes. How does that project represent something that you wanted to say? Maybe was it timely, or how does
Well,
that music carry that message?
I think the biggest way is like this is like I've spoke about it before is that my writing process is one where I take experiences and relationships that are created or that may happen throughout the day, throughout the week, the month. I also travel a lot. Before Corona, obviously, I was traveling a lot, touring and going different places. I was meeting different people. But I always felt like that when it comes to me writing and making music, I take all those people inside the booth with me. And everybody's got a story. And I always figure it like this. With music today even got less time, right? But generally, you've always had 2 to 4 minutes of a person giving themselves over to you when they're playing your music for it to in a I don't want to say it in a spooky way, but it sort of is that you have control over that person for 2 to 4 minutes or however long they're listening to you, right? So
Mhm.
you have a major opportunity to implant and inject things that are either gonna build or destroy the person, right? So I felt like, obviously with this project Love Notes, was something that I wanted to be able to talk about them like my song, not best friends. Best friends is one that I wanted to write it in a vague way to where if a person felt that way about music like I did, or they felt it about a friend, or they felt that about, God or whatever their spiritual preference, that I wanted to be able to write things sort of open to where, although I may be talking about X, I want everybody else to feel what I'm feeling right now. So it comes into everything, the type of records that you pick, how you say what you're saying. A lot of things in hip hop is not really just about what the person said, as we all know. It's like how I said it, the cadence of what I said. How's that person? Because even regardless, you look at hip hop today, so many of these guys are using, like right now, it's really hitting the electric guitars or a Spanish guitar, you know what I'm saying, with a crazy 808, something that sounds very emotional, but they're not even talking about emotional things. They're talking about
Mhm.
getting money or something like that. But because of the way that they're saying it and the track that they use, people are still getting inspired emotionally. It's pulling out a different emotion out of them that's bringing a certain attachment either to that artist or to the items that they're talking about. So really, this is a science and it's much deeper than, just like, oh, this is dope beat, let me do this. But I calculate these things. So, that's really in my projects.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something I really liked about Love Notes in itself, is that it was relatively vague, but also can convey something that is relative to you. So I think it can be really reachable to a lot of different people for different reasons, like best friend could be about your best friend, could be about your relationship to music, could be about a relationship that you have with someone who maybe you aren't so close with but feel like a best friend, you know, like it could just be anything. And I really like that, and something that has kind of helped me on my spiritual journey, kind of finding my purpose, my truth, is getting connected to things and having this vagueness with the world, because everything is everything, kind of, you know.
Right. No, it's
So
true.
I really like love notes in that, because I could make a lot of those connections.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Of course. There was one thing in the documentary that I wanted to address, something that you had said that kind of piqued my interest more. Just I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So Chucky asked you about, you know, why did you choose Judaism? You know, raised Catholic, switched, converted to Islam, or were studying Islam, and then fully converted to Judaism. And you had been, you kind of took the approach of answering that question like, I've just been searching for myself. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
want to find my own truth in this world, and
Right.
instead of like following the truths that have been bestowed upon you.
Right.
And then later, you, in that same tangent, you were talking about from a historical standpoint, how there's no reason for the Jewish people to even be here, looking at their really awful history as people. And you decided to follow that and get involved in their culture and that religion, and really digest it for yourself. So I
Right.
was wondering if that may be related to something that you dealt with within yourself before converting, like maybe not feeling like you should even be here.
Right. No, for sure. I think it's all these experiences that a person may have on a grander level, experience these things in a microcosmic way or whatever. For sure. And I felt like even bigger than me, to go back out bigger, that's been almost the African American experience. The Black experience has been like from a very strong underdog standpoint. You know what I mean? As much as for instance, I used to be a big, I'm not gonna say I used to be, because even though I'm not following as much, big Seahawks fan, right? Big Seahawks fan. And it was great. It was several years ago, they went to the Super Bowl that I'm still upset about, that they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was the worst refereeing ever in football history. But that year they were smashing, right? They were killing and they were doing their thing. But it was something about, these past few years of seeing Russell Wilson and seeing, sorry, I'm going on this tangent, but
Yeah,
seeing,
yeah.
Pete Carroll, like these guys became a second half team. Like they'll get punched in the mouth that first quarter, second quarter, but those adjustments to be able to come back and to come out on top again, it's just like it's an amazing thing. And that thrill of feeling that type of victory, it lasts longer and it feels better than the victory that a person gets when they just like obliterated the opponent. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like not fun. It's like playing the game. It's not fun anymore. So I say that to say that the experience of even converting to Judaism is a lot more complicated than other religions, because it's no proclamation or just confessing something, or just changing your mind. There's an actual system of court that you have to go through in order to do it. And unlike, my experience that I had in Christianity or in Islam, which I still have major respect for, and, as a Jew, we don't believe like you have to be Jewish in order to go to heaven. That was another thing that attracted me to Judaism, was more of an all-inclusive, like, we have a special mission, but yet you don't have to be a part of that in order for you to have a place in the world to come. You know what I mean? So it was much more open. But at the same time, it was sort of like this, you know, going after that girl that, doesn't really want you. Okay, so it's a little easy to get like over here, but Judaism rejects you. That's a part of the religions. Like they don't take new people like just whatever. You first have to be rejected to see, because it doesn't make a difference to them whether you are or whether you're not. You understand what I'm saying? So first it has to be one of those things like, do you really want this? So that was one aspect. And then what you bring up, the idea of having a crazy past, where, we talk about it every Passover. That's one of the themes, is that, and even me, I have a book that goes through all the way from the Greeks, the Romans, Egyptians, the the Nazis, the you know what I mean, and every generation of this one and that one, that it shouldn't be. Mark Twain talked about this, back in the 1800s. He went to Israel. He was just like, how could it be that these guys make up such a small population, and there was these major kingdoms, and somehow they still seem to exist? So to me, that sort of became, for me, much less than the a hint to the greatness or the beauty of the Jewish people as a whole. That became, to me, validity of God's existence, because it shouldn't be. You understand what I mean? So me, that was sort of like a miracle for me, saying like, well, here's the validity. Sort of like, even if you look in the Islamic hadiths, or you look in the Christian Bible, at the end of, you look at eschatology, the one for surefire thing, that whether a person calls them, from JC, Allah, to God, whatever, Hashem, at the end of it, all those books lead to the fact that there has to be Jews and there has to be Israel. So it's a very interesting thing that from all this time, you see all those things come to place. It's like a major proof, you know what I mean? So so that was one of the things that really made me feel like, wow, you know what I'm saying? This is like God showing off right now. You know what I'm saying? And so, and it's a beautiful thing in the sense of also too how it comes about, because it's all about the underdog, because it says even in the Torah, God didn't choose you because you're the greatest people in the world. He said it's the opposite. He said it's not because you're the greatest. He said you're the lowest of the people. He said because through you I'm gonna be able. It took, when Moses went to Pharaoh, to Pharaoh, we call him Pharaoh, whatever. Pharaoh, when he went to him, he said to him, listen, I can't even speak right. I'm going to go be the spokesman. So that God is, like, in my opinion, is always about the underdogs. You know what I mean? So that made me feel like, as an underdog, a person who's not supposed to succeed, a person that's not supposed, like, this is what I'm all about right here. So it really resonated with me.
Something that I just want to ask this final thing, and I'll let you get back to your kids after this. But
Right.
you said that it's a miracle, really, that these people have transcended history and are still around. Is that why you are Nissim Black?
Nah, that story actually came about. It was a kind of a crazy story. I had, you obviously take on a name, a Hebrew name, as you go through a conversion. And usually you take on this name before, ahead of time, because, when you have official documents, your wedding documents, all that, you want that your name will be on there. So there was a few names suggested to me, and my original name at birth was Joshua. Before my parents changed it to Damien, it was originally Joshua. Joshua is Yehoshua in Hebrew. So that was one of the names that I actually thought. I said, maybe I'll go back to the original name. Mm-hmm. And Nissim was another name that, I was contemplating, and it was between these two names. And I remember I made it earlier on inside the synagogue before anybody got there. So I started praying about a name. What's my name? Nissim, Joshua, Yehoshua, whatever. Mm-hmm. And as the clock had ticked, everybody was going to start coming in. I grabbed the prayer book, and on the front of it, it said Nissim on it. So I took it as a sign, you know what I mean? That was the name to run with. And since then, it's a very interesting thing. I thought about it this past Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is the time of, same thing as Christmas, like in terms of it's the time of winter. It's the festival, and the whole month takes on. And Judaism teaches that the whole month, speaking of the Hebrew months, take on the theme of whatever holiday is in that month. So Hanukkah is a time of darkness, right? And it's also the time where light overcomes the darkness. It also represents the darkest time of the year. And one of the biggest things that's talked about inside of, like, at least the Jewish holy books, is it's the month of miracles. And I was born in that same month. So so it's very interesting. It's a big connection. I wasn't thinking about it. And you know what else? If that's not a for sure proof that this was always supposed to be my name, that's also the month of donuts, and I love donuts. So for sure.
There it is, the icing on the donut. All right, well, thank you for talking to me, Nissim. It's been really nice to get to know you and meet you, and I'm glad that we got in touch. And
Thank you
for
so
any of
much.
those interested in his magnificent music, crazy bars, go check him out on all streaming platforms. And even that documentary, it was really informative and a great way to get to know you before this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course, of course.